My name is Daver, and in this very special episode, I'm gonna make some Christmas movie inspired decorations out of wood. So kick off your shoes, get ready to say the blessing.
The blessing!
And gather around the tree.
Low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating inbred!
This is Daver Made. Well, it's that time of year again, and nothing says Christmas more than credit card debt, hangovers, and of course, your favorite holiday classics. Now, there are so many options out there for purchasing Christmas decor, but to me, it all looks the same. So I thought, why not do something different? These decorations that I made were inspired by 3 of my favorite holiday classics. Now, I want to say that each of these projects will vary in level of difficulty and tools used. However, with a little bit of innovation and creativity, anyone can complete these projects using very minimal tools. All right, without further ado, let's get into the video.
That's it. There we go. A little more. Thanks a lot, guys. Fragile. It must be Italian.
Now, the first thing I wanted to mention is that this idea came from my father-in-law, who has made lake lamp crate lids before in the past for holiday decorations. I took the idea and adapted it to a piece that could be used indoor and outdoor, and I'm using cedar fence pickets as the pallet boards, if you will, for this project. I'm using Titebond 3, which is a waterproof glue, since I intend on keeping this piece outside. And while this step isn't necessarily needed, I thought adding glue would just make this piece a little bit more sturdy in the end. For the cross support pieces, I'm using the leftover parts of the pickets, and I'm measuring square across the entire panel and cutting down on my miter saw. If you don't have a power miter saw, you could use a hand saw and a miter box. Cedar is a very soft wood and it is easy to cut. Again, for extra support, I'm adding Titebond 3 before nailing the cross pieces down on the panel. If you don't have a pin nailer or a brad nailer, you can use a hammer and nails, just like they used to in the old days. After letting the glue dry for several hours, I removed it from the clamps and started to apply my stencil to the panel. Here's a semi-pro tip: if you don't want your stencil to move on you, tape it down with some painter's tape. Now, the weather was pretty crummy, so I did not have the opportunity to go outside and spray on the paint, so I decided to use a foam brush and brush on the paint, which, as you can see here, was a big mistake. The paint bled through and it looked like crap. So I had to take my Dremel and clean up those edges and sand around so I could re-stencil, and then when the weather got better, take it outside to spray. And boy, does the spray paint look a lot better. So don't paint on the paint, spray on the paint. It looks like what it really would look like on a crate. And if you're looking for accuracy to the actual crate in the movie, this is going to achieve it. Now, I didn't have an arrow stencil, so I had to draw on an arrow and then tape around it to kind of mask off where I obviously didn't want paint to go. And then I was going to spray, but again, the weather turned bad, so I had to do this inside, but I was masked up and had proper ventilation. Now, the one downside to spray painting is the overspray, and I had to sand it all off. Now it was time to see how my arrow stencil worked out.
Dude, are you serious?
It was terrible.
Oh, fudge.
Only I didn't say fudge.
And then I had to break out the Dremel again, and it saved the day and cleaned up that arrow pretty good. This is a pretty simple project that can be done in about a day, and it doesn't cost a lot, especially if you have scrap, pallet, or any other boards lying around.
Hey!
Now for this project, I'm using a 2-inch poplar dowel, which is the perfect size for making mini paint can ornaments, it turns out. To simulate a paint can, I'm spray painting these with a metallic looking paint called Shining Armor, and this paint looked awesome. Now I wanted to reference the movie when making the paint can label, and I only found this still from the movie. So with this, I then went into Canva and designed this label for both cans, and then printed it out on my color printer. I then carefully cut out the label, and then I used my son's glue stick to glue it on. Now, this was just to kind of hold it down, and then I used some CA glue to reinforce the edges. And it was already starting to look pretty cool. Now, to hold the handle on the paint buckets, I'm using screws and washers, and then marking and drilling some pilot holes on each side of the paint can ornament. For the handles, I'm using some memory wire, which I believe is used for jewelry. And I'm not gonna lie, this stuff was a pain in the butt to shape and attach to these. But after some minor frustration and adjusting and cutting, I got it just right. Now to add a little bit more realism to these paint can ornaments, I'm going to use some acrylic paint and just kind of simulate spillover from pouring paint, if you will. And then for the rope portion that is tied to the paint buckets, I'm using some nylon string and tying a pretty decent knot and testing it out in case I actually had to use it against the wet bandits myself. And making it at a decent length where you can use this for an ornament on your tree or somewhere else in your home if you choose to. I'm not gonna lie, this was a very fun project to make, and these are currently in my Christmas tree. I think they're really awesome decorations, especially for a Home Alone fan such as myself.
Merry Christmas! Dinner was full!
Now this idea was definitely the most ambitious one, and I really wanted to make a bathroom occupancy sign using the iconic saying, which I know is not exactly what Cousin Eddie says, but it's close enough. I'm using these craft letters that I got from my local hobby store, and they're not the best, and I realize that they're not even in size, but they'll do. This is a prototype. I would like to redesign this in the future, probably make it a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. Now this sign is going to be a sliding sign, so depending on which way it is, it will either indicate that the shitter is full or empty. And to do this, you need 2 panels, and what I needed to first do was route a rabbit to hold the back panel. And once I did a dry fit, I could then measure to see where the front sliding panel would go. Now the front panel is 1/8 of an inch thick, so I routed a groove about that width, but had to make a couple passes to widen it so it would move freely. Then I dry fit everything together and measured the ends so I could cut the end pieces that would hold everything together. After sanding everything, which I'll spare you from watching, I then stained and painted everything prior to the glue up. Now to add a little extra character to this piece, I decided to cut out a silhouette of Cousin Eddie emptying his RV black tank. Now it was time for the glue up, and I'm using Type Bond Quick and Thick, and I think this glue is really good for projects like this one. Now after the two main rails dried, it was time to put on this sliding piece, and I'm wiping paste wax on the edges so it will slide a little bit easier. And then I glued and nailed in the end pieces. To glue the letters on, I'm using Starbond Medium CA glue. And I did my best to line these up, but as I mentioned earlier, these letters were pretty crappy and were kind of cheaply cut, it seems. However, despite how the letters look, I still really enjoyed this project and had a lot of fun making it, and I thought it was a really cool thing to try out. Eventually, I'll mount this to a door or maybe put it on a table in a hallway near a restroom. It's a prototype, but I think you get the idea, and it's fun to say the least. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe this will give you some kind of idea for decorations that you can make inspired by your favorite holiday classics. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I only made these 3 because I kind of ran out of time, and I have many more favorite holiday classics that I would love to make decorations for. One decoration I didn't have enough time to make was a 2-scale model of the Nakatomi Plaza for my front yard. The neighbors would have loved that. I even wanted to do a whole pyrotechnics show with that one. Well, that'll do it for this video and also for this year. If you aren't subscribed to my channel, I highly recommend that you do so, and I'd really appreciate it. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and also share with your friends and your family. All of that said, I hope you have a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. I'll see you in 2023.